We're always hearing about data scientists and AI, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder who actually builds the digital world they operate in? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most critical yet kinda invisible jobs in all of tech, the data engineer.
Get this. Every single day, we create about 328 million terabytes of new data. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that number. It's basically impossible.
And here's the real problem. Most of that data, it's a complete mess. It's this chaotic digital flood pouring in from our apps, our clicks, our smartwatches. And on its own, it's just raw, messy noise. Frankly, it's totally useless.
So who's the person that steps into this digital hurricane and somehow turns all of that chaos into something clear, something that can power a business or train the next big AI model?
Well, this is where our hero, the data engineer, comes in. Think of them as the unseen architects of the data world. They're the ones who design and build the foundations that everything else relies on, bringing order to that digital chaos.
So what is a data engineer, really? At their core, they are systems builders. And this is a huge point. They don't just analyze data. Nope. They design, build, and maintain the entire infrastructure that transforms that raw, messy data into a clean, reliable resource that literally everyone else depends on.
A really good way to think about what they do is to picture a factory, a data factory. They build the entire assembly line from start to finish. They take in the raw materials, all that messy data, and at the other end, out comes this polished, super valuable product.
And that assembly line has a name. It's called a data pipeline. It usually breaks down into 4 key stages that the data engineer is responsible for building and managing. Let's walk through them.
All right, first up, ingestion. This is all about just getting the data from all its different sources into one central place. So think about a mobile app. Every single tap, every swipe, that creates data. The engineer's job is to build a system that can capture millions of those raw clicks and pour them into a central spot, like a data lake.
Okay, next is transformation, and honestly, this is where the magic happens. That raw click data usually comes in as these messy, unorganized text files. The engineer writes code to clean it up, make sure it's valid, and reshape that absolute mess into perfect, structured tables. It's like turning crude oil into rocket fuel.
So the data is clean. Awesome. But now where do you put it? That's where storage comes in. Data engineers are the architects of huge data warehouses. For example, at an e-commerce company, they might design something called a star schema, which is just a really clever way of organizing tables so the sales team can pull reports on products and customers super fast.
And look, you can't be doing all this by hand every day, right? Of course not. That's why we have orchestration. Data engineers use tools to completely automate their pipelines. A super common setup is a job that automatically kicks off at, say, 3 a.m. every morning, processes all of yesterday's sales data, and, this is key, if anything breaks, bam, an alert goes straight to the team.
Now I have to stop here because there's a really common beginner mistake. A lot of people look at this and think, oh, so it's just moving data around. But the reality is so much bigger than that. You're not just a plumber moving digital water. You are building the entire factory that creates the information everyone else relies on.
Okay, so if data engineers are the factory builders, how do they fit into the bigger picture at a tech company? Well, that's where this idea of the data team pyramid comes in handy.
To build these data factories, engineers have a pretty powerful toolkit. For the nuts and bolts, their core languages are Python and SQL. To handle insane amounts of data really fast, they use processing engines like Apache Spark. To automate the whole thing, they use schedulers like Apache Airflow. And it all usually runs on one of the big cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, or GCP.
In this table here, it does a perfect job of showing how the big 3 data roles fit together. The data engineer is the architect. They build the foundation. Then you have the analytics engineer, who's like the finisher, preparing the data for business users. And finally, the data scientist is the analyst, who uses that clean data to find game-changing insights. They all need each other, but the engineer builds the ground they all stand on.
All right, so you might be thinking, this sounds cool, but is it a good career? The answer is a huge yes. It's an incredibly future-proof path with a ton of room for growth where you can go from just building pipelines to shaping the entire data strategy for a company.
And that career progression is super clear. You might start as a junior, building parts of a pipeline with some help. Then you move up to a mid-level role, where you own smaller projects from start to finish. As a senior, you're designing the architectural blueprints, and eventually, you can become a staff or principal engineer, where you're literally setting the data strategy for the entire company.
Okay, what about job security? I mean, we've all seen the news about tech layoffs. But get this, the unemployment rate for this role stayed at an incredibly low 2.2%. Why? It's simple. These skills are foundational. Companies always need them. And that high demand, well, it shows up in the paycheck. It's not uncommon for junior data engineers to start out well over $100,000 a year, right out of the gate.
And as you grow into those senior roles, you're easily pushing past $200,000 and often much higher. The salary is a direct reflection of how vital this work is.
And if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. As we go deeper into the age of AI, just remember, it's the data engineers who are quietly building the rock-solid foundations that make all these incredible models possible. They are literally fueling the revolution.
So after all that, how do you know if this is the right path for you? Well, ask yourself this. Do you actually enjoy building things? Do you get a kick out of creating a system that's rock solid and scalable? Do you love solving the puzzle of making something fast, reliable, and super efficient?
So I'll just leave you with this question. Do you want to build the superhighways that power the entire AI revolution? Because that's what this is really all about. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.